Well, hello, IndyCar fans. It's Martha, and I want to welcome you to episode 14 of Cruising 41. This time, we're going to debrief what happened at the Detroit Grand Prix, and we saw Alex Palou doing Alex Palou things. So he started on pole, and he won the race. And this race had a lot to offer. It was exciting. It was very competitive. There was a lot of changes, strategy issues, penalties, cautions. It had every ingredient to make it a very entertaining and very exciting race. But it is very hard to follow the Indianapolis 500 and be the very next race after the Indy 500, especially so when the Indy 500 gave us those final laps and the closest ever finish in the history of the Indianapolis 500. So a very tough act to follow, and but you know, in all the proportion, or with all that said and taking that into consideration, it was a very good race. It was a very entertaining race. So Detroit is a street circuit, so there are a couple of things that are part of, one is the qualifying format that we have seen at the street circuits, whereby the top six, or the fast six rather, they have to do a one qualifying attempt to be able to to look for pole. Each driver who are on the fast six, they get to decide the order in which they want to go, obviously starting with whomever put the fastest time that transfer them from the top 12 to the fast six. And then they get one opportunity and one opportunity only to fight for pole. And the other one is a tire rule. It's only for street circuits, whereby every single driver has to have at least, during the race, they have to run 2 sets of red stickers or alternate tires. So whatever the strategy they choose, they have to run the sticker reds twice during the race, at least twice. So during quali, we had a couple of red flags, and they happened. One in group 1, it was Mick Schumacher, and then in group 2, it was David Malukas. At the end of the qualifying, Alex Palou on pole yet again. This is his 4th pole of the 2026 season and his 3rd one in a row. Will Power had a very strong qualifying, and he put his Andretti Global car on front row, and then the 3rd one was Scott McLaughlin. So you had 2 Honda engines front row, and then a Chevy with Scott McLaughlin. And it is important to highlight, the Honda Chevy situation, because Detroit is a motor city, and that is where General Motors is headquartered. So of course, the wish is to have GM doing very well in this track, but it was not meant to be. So like I said, so Will Power 2nd and Scott McLaughlin 3rd. And I wanted just to point out that one yet again, because these two, and I said that with all due respect, they, both Scotty Mac and Willie P, they were at each other, and they were on all kinds of spiciness and will-to-will activity, from the start of the race, but also even later on when they found themselves into a little bit of trouble and a very spicy competitive exchange. So ECR, Ed Carpenter Racing, they did not have a good race, or they didn't have a good race at all last time around at the Indianapolis 500. As you recall, all three cars were out of the race, and that was not ideal for all three. So then at the start of the race in Detroit, we saw Alexander Rossi hitting the wall even before the race started. And it was not a significant damage, so he was able to carry on. And but it was a very challenging race for him. He ended up collecting a couple of penalties, during the race. And then Christian Rasmussen, which is the other ECR car, he had an incident, a hit in turn 1, and he was our first retirement of the race. So I mentioned a couple of penalties for Alexander Rossi. The first penalty was a drive-through, and that was as a result of him doing a pit stop, going into the pits and getting served in the pits while there was a caution, and therefore the pits were closed. And his second penalty was as a result of a contact with Roman Grosjean. Marcus Armstrong, he was another key player at the Indianapolis 500, and with Felix Rosenqvist, with that battle towards the end. But anyway, in Detroit, he also had a penalty for entering the pit lane during cautions, during full course yellow, and he was not served. He did not complete a pit stop per se, but regardless, he entered the pits when the pits were closed, so he received that a penalty, and that was lap 40. And that caution that resulted in a penalty for Marcus Armstrong was because of a situation between Graham Rahal and Kevin Simpson, whereby Kevin Simpson got in the back of Graham Rahal's car. Graham Rahal spun. He was able to keep the car going and the engine going, and he was able to continue the race. But at that point of time, he was last in the race. More chaos, because that is the word of the day when it came to the Detroit Grand Prix. And this time it was an incident between Rinus VeeKay and Santino Ferrucci. This was lap 66, and both were able to carry on. And then, unfortunately, about 12 laps later, Santino Ferrucci had to leave the race. He became another DNF. His was because of a mechanical issue. And then Scott Dixon, a few laps later, lap 69, a few laps later from when Rinus and Santino had their incident, he also had, he didn't finish the race. He was out of the race because of a hybrid issue. And like I said, that was lap 69. So after all that chaos, and because of the yellows, and because how strategy was, was unfolding and whatnot, it was all kind of remixed, and it was looking like we could potentially see a podium for Mick Schumacher and David Malukas. But on lap 75, they were in this exchange, in this racing exchange, battling for those podium positions, and unfortunately Mick Schumacher ran wide, and then David Malukas couldn't just really get to the turn, and then they lost a lot of positions, and as a result they lost that opportunity to get on the podium. And then I mentioned at the beginning, Scotty Mack and Will Power, how they were from, since the start, they were kind of at it. But then later on the race, They were really, really, really very racy against each other. They were very close to each other. They were very competitive, and they were fighting for position. So they eventually tangled, in turn 3. That exchange was super spicy between the two of them. And like I said, they had been battling from the start of the race. So as a result, they were both out of the race. So Will looked really strong, very strong since the beginning of the race. It looked like finally he was going to get that result that he's been looking for. As a matter of fact, he led about 18 laps and he looked solid. Unfortunately, after that exchange with Scott McLaughlin and, actually Scott McLaughlin kind of like closing the door on him, and Will kind of get his 2 front wheels kind of like airborne a little bit. I mean, neither one of them was able to carry on, and both retired. Will retired first as a result of that incident, if memory serves me right, and Scott McLaughlin did so just slightly later. So Will Power was really, he was furious, to put it mildly. And actually they were both very disappointed and frustrated. But you get a feel for Will Power. This is his first season with Andretti Global, and he has not been able to get a good result. It has been either DNFs or accidents or issues, some completely out of his control, mechanical issues, brake issues, like I said, accidents, impacts. Even last weekend at the Indianapolis 500, he had that one moment that it was kind of very scary that resulted in a DNF for him. Thankfully, he wasn't like per se on the track, but he was kind of like on the entry, pit lane entry, but still. So it's just, time and time again, it's something. It's a very unlucky time for him, but hopefully, he'll turn this around. Actually, I'm sure he'll turn this around. Will Power is a very talented driver. He just needs a good result to just, to get going, to start getting momentum, and it will come. It's just been very unfortunate. So you got to feel for him. Now let's talk Graham Rahal, because Graham Rahal ended up in the podium in 3rd, and so it was a superb recovery from him. I mentioned earlier that he was involved in an impact, not his fault, Kiffin Simpson, and he spun and he was last at that point of time. And so his recovery and getting through the field and getting himself into podium position, it's nothing but remarkable. This is his 3rd podium this season. So Graham is doing a really, really good job. So congratulations to Graham and the team, Rahal, Letterman Lendgen Racing. And very strong finish. So the final results were Alex Palou, Kyle Kirkwood, and Graham Rahal. And, again, Honda dominance for the top 3. The first Chevy of, in the top 10 was Pato. So Pato finished 4th, after coming back from the Indy 500 and finishing 4th there as well. And once again, he said it after his race in an interview, the hardware is just not there. The car is not there for him to be able to fight, for him to be able to be competitive, for him to be able to, get podiums and wins. I mean, up until this point in 2026, his best results has been fourth. No podiums and no wins for him. I know his win will come and the podium will come, but it is very, very sad to see him doing his best, extracting what can be extracted out of the car, and and not being able to really fight competitively in the front. At least this time around, he looked a little racier, look a little bit more competitive than he had in the past. But still, I mean, someone as talented as Pato, he is the one who's getting that car to places where that car is not ready to go. And it is unfortunate to see, and it's sad to see. And, hopefully for the upcoming races, he can get a more competitive car that can allow him to get podiums and wins. I just want to make a quick comment about Kyle Kirkwood as well. So congratulations to Alex Palou, another very dominant, not so much dominant race, but another dominant display in that, he started on pole and he capitalized into the win. The number 10 car, the team, Alex, Jeep Ganassi Racing, they doing everything. They're all at their top of the game, and they're doing everything and anything perfectly for him to be winning races. And Kyle Kirkwood, who came second, he had a solid race, but again, kind of like some pit stops, not as bad as they had been in the past for Andretti Global, but the pit stops, and some of the strategy calls. If you want to beat Alex Palou and you have the car to do so, which it looks like he does, then all those other items had to be also perfect in order to have an opportunity to beat someone as perfect as Alex Palou is at the moment. So we'll see. The championship is still early, but Alex Palou, it's continues to be our championship leader. Kyle Kirkwood is right there with him, and I believe is David Malukas third in the championship, Christian Lundgaard, and then Pato. So then we go to the Worldwide Technology Raceway, or Gateway, like others like to call it. And this is a 1.25 mile oval. And it's actually in Madison, Illinois, except that it is just kind of like in the border with St. Louis. That's where we're going next. And we'll see what happens there. So if you look just purely by history, Joseph Newgarden has been dominant there, and he is won it 5 times over there. Scott Dixon has won it a couple of times, and Kyle Kirkwood is our most recent winner. He won it in 2025. Now, it is really hard to predict, especially when it comes to Joseph Newgarden, because as you recall, he had a very bad impact and an accident at the Indianapolis 500. And as a result, he's been wearing this cast. I don't know if it's a cast, but he's wearing this boot on his leg. He still drove the car, even though they had potentially, I think it's Felipe Nasser, they had him there in case Joseph couldn't, run the race. But Joseph did run the race. Hopefully, by the time we get to Gateway, he will be fully recovered and he is able to be competitive as he's always been there, and can give us just a great, show he's always given us. But we shall see what that race is going to look like, who has the potential to win it. But if Joseph is at his 100%, he is definitely going to be a contender. So I guess that's it for the Detroit GP. And let me know in the comments what you think. Again, I mean, it is just super hard to be the race that follows the Indianapolis 500, especially so when the Indianapolis 500 was as epic and as historic as it was. So, but the Detroit Grand Prix did deliver in the excitement. And so anyway, just let me know what you think. And we will, I'll get back online after Gateway. So look for the next video. And in the meantime, just subscribe, like the video, interact with me, drop some comments here, or just go to my socials. Let me know what you think. And I will be talking to you next week. And I'll see you then. Thank you. Bye.